We'll go live then.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, good morning, members, officers and members of the public joining us today. Welcome to this meeting of the South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee on the 9th of October 2024. My name is Councillor Anna Bradnam and I'm the chair of the committee. My vice chair is Councillor Peter Fain. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed, and by your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you're deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they're addressing the committee. And for those of us present in the room, please ensure your microphone is close to you and speak clearly when addressing the room. I'm advised that there will be a brief fire alarm test at 10:30, note, so we will pause the meeting at that time. And the lights continue to flash afterwards, so don't worry about that. For those of us in the chamber, please note that we do not have to leave the building during these tests. If at any time a member leaves the meeting, please would they make that known so it can be recorded in the minutes. And remember that members need to be present for the whole consideration in order to vote on an item. So, item 2, apologies. Lawrence, are there any apologies for absence today?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone. 2 apologies for absence, one from Councillor Dr. Richard Williams and the other from Councillor Heather Williams. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, we come to item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? No signs. If it becomes apparent as we go through that you might have an interest, do declare it at that time. Number 4 is minutes of the previous meeting, and members, I'm informed that the minutes of the previous meeting are unavailable at this time, so we'll move on to item 5. And item 5 is a member pre-application briefing from the Babraham Research Campus. I'm advised that this briefing should be held in private session, and as such, I'd like to propose that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of item 5 in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, on the grounds that, if present, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, brackets, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, close brackets, of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. So, do I have a seconder for this proposal?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Fain. Can we take that proposal by affirmation? Thank you very much. So, we'll now take this item in private session, and for those joining us online, I believe there may be some, we will return to open session at 11 a.m. to take item 6, application 24/01473/FUL in Sawston. So, we'll look forward to seeing anybody who wants to join us then at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much, and could I ask Democratic Services to take us offline, please? Thank you very much. We're welcome back to the meeting of the Planning Committee at 11:09. We'll now resume our business in public session and move to item 6, which is application 24/1437 FUL, which is phase 2 at South Cambridgeshire Science Park, Dell Manor Business Park in Sawston. And we will be taken through this by Alice Young. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Chair. So the application is for the demolition of the concrete batching plant and the erection of the R&D office building, associated landscaping, car parking deck, infrastructure works and plant at phase 2, South Cambridge Science Centre. Next slide. Bear with us. So this is the application site. It's off Babraham Road, so it's on the north side of Babraham Road within Dale Manor Business Park. The site is east of West Way, and it is adjacent to the Greenbelt and Development Framework, which is along the north-eastern boundary, just here. So the countryside is over here and the Greenbelt is over here. There are residential properties to the southwest and west of the site, alongside properties to the southeast. There is one farmhouse dwelling to the north of the site, accessible via West Way. Within Dale Manor Business Park, there are a range of businesses, including office, R&D, lab space. So the site may look familiar, particularly when members went out site. So there is a phase 1 which was permitted by committee in 2023. There is, this is obviously phase 2 of the campus which they're trying to create. The application site includes the full extent of the landscaped area, multi-storey decked car park, points of access extending to the adopted public highway on Babraham Road, which were included within the red line of the permitted scheme, which is phase 1 here. And also obviously includes the concrete batching plant, where my mouse is now, if you can see that. So the red line boundary of the site excludes the main approved R&D building, which was approved as part of phase 1, and includes the landscaping. This is because there was an overlap between the red lines, so it is the most clean way to include all of the landscaping, as well as the car parking deck, which phase 2 relies on. So I hope that's clear for members. So just to show you a Google image of the site, so this is the concrete batching plant here, West Way here, going to Grove Road, and Babraham Road is further south. So this is the main central campus bit with the car parking deck here. You'll note that there is a green tree belt along the Greenbelt and Development Framework boundary to the northeast of the site. This is the public footpath to the east of the site, which goes between Dale Manor Business Park and the residential dwellings. Members may remember going down this footpath for the phase 1 member site visit. I'm not sure that you managed to get there on Friday. So this is the proposed block plan. You'll see that the main previously approved building is outside of the red line plan. This is the car parking and cycle building. the visitor car parking, which remains the same. And then this is the new building fronting Westway here, with a service access and bin store here. So I'm going to flick through the floor plans. It's to create, obviously, an open plan R&D office space with communal facilities at ground floor, including multiple meeting rooms and toilets, etc. There is lift access to the upper floors. This is the first floor, this is the second floor, and this is the roof plan where the plant and PV panels will lie. So this is the north-west front elevation, so this will front Westway. You'll see that the building heights are on the diagram here, just for members to note. So the design of the proposal is similar to the phase 1, but slightly different, so they don't look identical merged together. The proposed development would obviously replace the concrete batching plant, which is considered a negative feature in the surrounding context, with a 3-storey rectangular shaped building with small projections on the east and western elevations. So you'll see that here there is a glazed projecting element to break up the massing. The height would be comparable to the consented scheme adjacent to the site, and other R&D buildings on the northern side of Westway. The proposal adopts a similar contemporary design to the adjacent consented scheme, creating a vertical rhythm that breaks down the massing, with design features that add visual interest, such as the central bays on the eastern and western facades. The dual entrance creates a visual and functional link between the 2 phases, which I'll show you again on the site plan, which the landscape design knits the 2 phases together. So officers consider that the proposal is high quality and responds to its context, whilst also enhancing the business park. So I'll just talk through the remaining elevations. So this is the side elevation towards the greenbelt. You'll see that there is a plant screen here, which is stepped in from the side elevation to make it more recessive, and it's also curved, which you won't see on these elevations, but you'll see on the 3D images. So this is the rear elevation, which looks onto phase 1, so the southeastern elevation. And this is the southwestern, the side elevation, which is adjacent to the entrance, the visitor entrance of phase 1. So this is the development in its context on Westway. This is a street scene. I forgot to mention earlier, but CSET is proposed to the north east of the site, and the proposal factors in a pedestrian link to the site when that comes forward. You'll see that the scale is similar to the surrounding context in these street scene views. So this is the comparison. So you'll see that the existing concrete batching plant is here, and this is the proposed, which is considered an enhancement. And this is, illustrates the scale. You'll see that the scale of the proposed building is exactly the same as the phase 1. And then this is the car parking deck. So this is kind of, shall I say, a harsh representation of what you would see in the greenbelt, because there would be, it doesn't account for the step backs and perspective views, but also the tree belt, which runs along the boundary, which will be reinforced with additional planting. And this obviously is the proposed building, and this is the neighbouring building, which recently got approved at planning committee, I think a couple of months ago, in September, on the opposite side of Westway. So this is a 3D model of the proposal. This is phase 1 here with the visitor car parking and the entrance, and this is phase 2. You'll see the curve in the plant deck screening and that it's stepped off the boundary to minimise its impact on the surrounding context. There is obviously a green strip along West Way to enhance the frontage and landscape setting of the scene. This shows the amenity space between the two phases, which will be shared between the two buildings. The idea is to create areas for people to eat their lunch, outdoor work, etc. So I wanted to show these landscape visual impact assessment views. This is view 4 from the footpath that I mentioned earlier to the northeast of the site. You'll see that, you might have to squint, so I'm sorry, that the blue framework here is phase 1 and phase 2 here, which is being proposed, is here in red. So it will be partially obscured by phase 1. This is the tree belt, which will be reinforced in both schemes to help screen the development and enhance the greenery of the site. This is from Rolling Lane, I believe, Rowley Lane. So further to the north towards Babraham village along that footpath. So again, phase 1 is the blue wire and phase 2 is the red wire. Obviously this is long range views. The below viewpoint here is the 3D visual of phase 2. Phase 1 is not included in this visual. And this shows the development without the additional planting, which will obviously help screen the development. So because they share the car parking deck, I just wanted to go over these figures just so members are aware. So as part of phase 1, obviously that was already consented, but phase 2 seeks to add additional cycle parking to the totals on the screen. And then no additional car parking spaces are provided in phase 2. They'll be split up between the phases. Just to note that County Highways Transport Assessment Team and Highways Development Control have no concerns about the proposal and supportive of the proposal and consider there to be no significant transport impact resulting. Also to note, supplementing the expansion of the cycle parking is a minibus facility service for residents to utilise more sustainable transport modes and achieve the modal shift proposed. So this is just the layout of the cycle parking, showing what's going to be in phase 1 and the additional in phase 2. These are all Sheffield stands, so there is capacity to obviously increase that with dual stands in the future if required, and that is covered in the framework travel plan. So just to summarise, the proposal would result in significant planning benefits, including the redevelopment of brownfield land and the removal of a negative industrial feature within the rural environment or the semi-rural environment of the village edge. The expansion of employment and the employment cluster. The proposal would deliver a high-quality design with a landscape and user focus, and the proposal targets BREEAM excellence, reducing water use on site by 74%, which is substantial. And of course, it promotes sustainable access to the development through a robust travel plan. So, Officer's recommendation is one of approval subject to conditions. The conditions are on screen. Some of the headline conditions are on screen now with the Section 106 contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms Young. So, one of the things I'm very pleased to see is the reinforcement of the tree buffer, because I think it's going to be very important for this site. Anyway, members, do you have any questions of clarification for the officer? Councillor Harvey?
Thank you. It's probably a minor point, but section 6.61 in the pack, it talks about cycle bars of minimum 3 millimetres thick. That seemed very insubstantial, whatever it is. I'm not sure what that means, sheet metal or metal bar.
Cycle what? Bars?
Well, it's talking about cycle security, and it talks about a minimum of 3 millimetres, which, if that is a metal bar, doesn't seem very thick, and I wondered whether it should be 30 millimetres or...
Are you able to explore that? I'm sorry, I will come to public speakers next.
Of course. Thank you for the question. That is comments from the police liaison officer. So the detail of the cycle parking, I'll just go into it. So the cycle parking is within the car and cycle deck, which I believe you'll have fob access to.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'll secure it via a Sheffield stand using your own lock. The stands will be cemented in the ground, so officers were considered that layout and that level of security was sufficient.
Okay, and on a second point, well, it's just an observation really that is it 83 square metres of solar panels. It's about the area on the outer ring of tables, I think, sort of. And I think you showed in one of the pictures, just disappointing that given, I noticed on the site tour that the new development is billed as a centre for development of sustainable technology. It's actually only using about, as far as I can see, about 1/10 of the available area, which is just a bit of a missed opportunity, but it's just a comment because it probably does comply with all the planning regs. So
This is a question of clarification.
Yes. Well, sorry, probably more of...
Yeah. So
that would be for later.
We're still on
anyway.
questions of clarification at the moment. We have not yet moved into debate. Just one moment. Yes, sorry. Thank you very much. Ms Young, were you able to respond to that question from Councillor Harvey?
Yes, of course. So, yes, there aren't as many solar panels in comparison to other schemes. However, the scheme does utilise air source heat pumps for heating and cooling, and 100% low energy lighting alongside many other sustainability measures. There is a condition proposed to ensure that they meet the requirements of carbon reduction of 10%, and there's also an energy statement condition with the requirement of meeting 4 BREEAM credits alongside factoring in rainwater harvesting into the design. So there is significant sustainability positives here. They're aiming to deliver 6 credits for BREEAM Energy 1, for example, and they're looking to achieve BREEAM Excellence overall. They're also looking to have 4 credits for BREEAM Watt 1, the water efficiency one. So there's a lot of factors to consider in terms of sustainability.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see Councillor Harvey and Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. So, sorry, Councillor Handley first, and then.
One of the third-party representations mentions a disused railway line. I wonder if you could possibly show us on an overhead map where that runs, please.
Sorry, just bear with us a second. Yeah. So my understanding is that the disused railway runs north-east of the site along that tree belt, which I believe is where CSET is proposed to be. That is my understanding.
So along that northeastern boundary.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's adjacent. It's adjacent to this site. Not. It doesn't go through it in any way.
Yeah, that is my understanding. Yeah.
And indeed, you showed us on your section plan that CSET, if it comes about, will follow the same line. Thank you. Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Page 13, 6.18, there's no comment from the Internal Drainage Board. I know the LLA have no objection, but then looking at how the surface water gets discharged, I'm just wondering, why is the IDB not commenting? It's because the water is going into a ditch eventually. Where does the ditch go?
Dr. Hawkins, I suspect there is no internal drainage board for this particular
Maybe
area.
I'm just trying to clarify, hence the question.
Yes, there is no internal drainage board for this area. Sorry, I can't see you because of the screen.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, there's no internal drainage board for the area. We've consulted the Lead Local Flood Authority, Anglia Water and the EA regarding the development, all of which have no objections to the proposal. Subject to
Yeah,
conditions.
sorry, it's just, it says in 6.25, the surface water runs to an artesian pond and then into a ditch. So it's nothing to do with Anglia Water. Who is it to do with?
So it's ultimately it's in the ownership of Anglian Water, who have said that they are happy to accept the flows that result from the development, and they're satisfied with that.
Then Anglia Water said this ditch is not in their jurisdiction for comment.
Sorry, Ms Young, as Councillor Hawkins has said, it's an ordinary watercourse which normally falls to the responsibility of the landowners under riparian ownership, and they have said, as Councillor Hawkins has drawn our attention to, it's outside the jurisdiction of Anglian Water, and that the authority would need to seek the views of the Environment Agency.
Claim to have no objection.
Apologies, that was a mistake. So the EA are satisfied with the proposal as
6.19.
evidence. Yeah,
They've given no
6.19.
objection. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hawkins? Great.
It's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, I can't see any other questions. So we'll come to our public speaker, who's Maddie Wild, the agent. Did you want to make a representation?
So you just press the right-hand button and that will turn on.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The application before you is Phase 2 of the South Cambridge Science Centre at Dales Manor Business Park in Sawston. My name is Maddie Wild, Planning Consultant with Sphere 25, and I am joined by the applicant, Michael Gallagher, Construction Director at Abstract. Abstract have a strong reputation for delivering high-quality buildings with leading environmental credentials, They support local apprenticeships and engage with local schools. This is shown through the work undertaken with both Icknield and Bellbird primary schools in collaboration with the Council's Youth Engagement Service. Phase 2 follows on from Phase 1, which was brought before the committee last year and unanimously approved. The proposals will demolish the existing concrete batching plant and provide 4,262 metres squared of used Class E floor space and 2,616 metres squared of landscaped amenity space. The scheme will grow the South Cambridge Science Centre into a first-rate research and development campus, which contributes to the Cambridge Science Cluster. The development is targeting BREEAM Excellent with an EPC rating of A and seeks a 10.3% reduction in carbon emissions. On-site water demand will be reduced by 74%, with 4 BREEAM water credits targeted. In keeping with the sustainable transport approach, car parking was already built into the Phase 1 scheme, together with space for an additional 123 cycle parking spaces. This has been agreed with Highways and equates to a 51% cycle mode share target to be monitored via a travel plan. A shuttle bus service is to be provided, and the existing footway provision along Babram Road will be upgraded via Section 106 contributions. Significant biodiversity improvements are proposed, which is reflected in a net gain of 491%. The landscaped amenity is improved from Phase 1 with an uplift of 543 metres squared. Officers consider that the proposal sits comfortably within its visual context, with the proposed building being partially screened by the Phase 1 building and existing trees along the northern boundary. This boundary will be reinforced with proposed tree planting. The materiality of the building, whilst in keeping with Phase 1, is distinguished enough to be differentiated. This breaks down the perceived massing of the combined developments in views from the public right-of-way to the north. To conclude, the scheme will provide much-needed research and development floor space in Cambridge, whilst providing exemplar facilities, amenities and sustainable transport infrastructure. The proposals will fit seamlessly and cohesively into the approved Phase 1 development. We trust you can support your office's recommendation and approve the application before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wild. Right, so members, just 1 moment. Does anybody have any questions for the agent? Don't see any, no. Okay, so members, we're into debate. I'll make a start. I visited the site separately to the committee site visit, so I went on Saturday morning, and I'm familiar with this site from previous applications. My observation is it's already developing well as a science park, and buildings that the campus style is beginning to develop. And the concrete patching plant is significant by its need to be removed. So we have had no objections from any of the normal statutory consultees, and indeed, to my mind, it looks like this would be an improvement, and I'm very glad to see that we have conditions around the strengthening of the landscaping strip along the northeastern boundary, which will help to soften that view from the footpath and from the greenbelt land beyond. But note that that very large facade that you see is already built, so this is an end-on building to that view. However, so I have no difficulty in saying I will support this application, but does anybody want to make any comment or an observation? Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for putting the planning balance back up on there. Yes, my conclusion will be much the same. I would just comment that the impact on the landscape from Rowley Lane of the Phase 1 is quite significant. It will be for this, but of course it will be an improvement from most people's point of view on the batching plant, although slightly higher. we've had very little comment on the transport. I anticipate that will be a real problem to this site in 10 years' time, but there's no reason why this development should have to deal with that. That's probably more to do with, depends more on the success or otherwise of the Lillywhites, Cambridge City. And that is, of course, no responsibility of those developing this site. So I'm very pleased to see it brilliant, excellent. I was very impressed with what I heard about the biodiversity net gain, which surprised me, but very gratifying. And I think there is overwhelming reason to support this application without too much delay.
So, members, I can't see any other speakers. Oh,
Tim
is that
Hawkins,
Councillor
sorry.
Dr. Timmy Hawkins?
Thanks. I'm kind of still going in my head this surface water thing. I'm looking at 1061 here, where the EA says that the proposed development should be assessed by an EIA, but we don't think it needs to be. And of course, the reason this is concerning is because we've had issues with sites where surface water during construction and after has been a problem. There's a lot of words, yes, we'll do this, we'll do that, but how do we make sure that the problem doesn't arise? I'm sorry, it's not matching for me.
Okay, so can we ask Ms Young, we've got a condition around surface water during construction. Would you like to just draw our attention to that?
Yes, so condition 13 requires the applicant to submit as surface water runoff details during construction. So that those details will be subject to consultation with the technical consultees prior to development starting. There's also something to note is the significant reduction in water demand for the site. The concrete batching facility generates, is water heavy, really. And the proposal looks to reduce water use by 74% on site. So that's a consideration as well. In terms of the EA suggesting that an EIA screening opinion should be submitted, officers took the view that given the significant reduction in the water use on site alongside the permission that's already been granted, that was not necessary on water matters, and we don't consider it to require an EIA screening opinion because we don't believe that it's EIA development.
Thank you, Chair. The question is whether or not the drainage will be built in the way that it was planned. We know it's not been in other sites in the past, but never mind.
I couldn't hear what you were saying, but if you wanted... Okay, right. Councillor...
They should build it the way it's been designed. It doesn't always happen. And that's what causes problems, and we end up with those problems.
Absolutely. Well, usually condition 1 is that it's built in accordance with the plan. Oh no, condition 2 is it's built in accordance with the plans, isn't it? So appreciate your reservations on that, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Martin Khan.
Only very briefly, really, to say that I'm not sure exactly what the permeability of the ground is in this area. It's on lower chalk, but I don't know the degree to which there is boulder clay, impermeable boulder clay. When I lived in Sawston 50 years ago, the garden was extremely clay, but we didn't tend to have standing water. So it may be that the relevant consultees feel that there is adequate permeability there. It's not going to stand like it would do if it was on Gault clay, for instance. I don't know. I just wondered whether we have any information on that, and whether there is actually, they had considered perhaps some form of a retention area in case there is surplus water, so it's released at a lower speed. Or I just wonder what the position is, whether we have any background information.
So, Ms Young, do we have any information about the underlying subsoil and whether that's likely to be able to handle the surface water runoff?
So the surface water will be managed through the use of permeable paving and attenuation tanks, controlling the amount of water leaving the site. Obviously, the lead local flood authority have considered the statistics or the flow rates coming off the site and considered that it would be acceptable, as has the EA. So officers considered that it was acceptable in the context of that, following their expertise.
Thank you very much. Right. The other thing I wanted to observe is that I'm glad to see that there is an effort to make a landscape management plan which tries to bind the existing building and the proposed new building together, such that there is a place for employees to be in between them. So, since we have no further requests to speak, can I come? Oh, sorry, Councillor Redrup. Yes, do go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that, well, a few points really, that the reason this has been brought to us is because the land was allocated for accommodation, and we could see clearly on our site visit that that doesn't seem to be a suitable use for this land at this time. So I think that objection is easily overcome. I was really pleased looking at these plans to see the provision for cycle parking. I'm sure members note me mentioning cycle parking on many occasions, and on this one, you know, I think it would be a great place to cycle to and lock up your bike, and I'm really pleased to see that. I guess my concerns are minor. I guess that putting this building here has made the amenity land, the area of amenity lands, into smaller patches. So I wonder if that will kind of impact on the use of the site and how people enjoy those areas. And it looked like there was going to be a pond, and I think it's a shame that that is going away. But again, I can see that having trees on the west lane side of it would be beneficial for how the site looks. So I can see that it does sort of weigh up in the end. Then my only other thing was about the water and the EIA, and I guess we're being told it's a 74% reduction in water use on site. That's what we're meant to be considering, I guess. I just wonder if we're allowed to think about it from a wider perspective for the district and the water use overall, because I imagine we still need concrete for this for this area, and so that concrete will still be being created, but I'm not sure that we're able to consider that from this site. So to me, it might be an increase in water usage overall for the district, but a decrease on this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's an interesting point that, of course, because it was a concrete batching plant, which does use a lot of water, I don't know if that's the balance that's being made, that it's a reduction in water usage compared to that usage. But actually, as you say, for the long term, the use of this building might use more. Are you able to comment on that?
Yes, of course. So, in terms of, you're right, Chair. So we looked at the water usage on site, compared the existing concrete batching plant usage to the proposed use. In terms of whether that's going to be relocated, when a new proposal comes in, we'll assess that impact, but we cannot consider that at the moment. So I hope that answers your question. In terms of the amenity area as a whole has actually increased the amenity provision, but the central bit has reduced slightly. But there is amenity land on the front of West Way, which obviously once the concrete batching plant is gone will be a lot more attractive to linger and sit and enjoy for workers. There's also something to note that we're, through the landscape design, obviously the landscape officer has been very involved in that, and they don't have any objections to the proposal. We've worked quite hard to push the landscape in the amenity area between the two buildings to work hard, have lots of different functions, and create lots of different areas, and areas that are distinctive with public art. So they've worked as part of phase 2 with the youth engagement officer and the wider community to bring forward a public art scheme that is reflective of the community that it's in. So there is a lot of work that we've worked together on, and we have pushed them to increase that area, the usable area of amenity space, to make sure that there is enough provision for the amount of people that will be on site.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Councillor Redrup for reminding us that this was allocated for housing, developed housing land, residential land, but obviously that not only is that no longer appropriate, but also in the village design guide, it was allocated as an industrial area. And this looks to me like a sensible and logical next step for the development on this site. So, Councillor Handley. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. During points of clarification, I did ask a point that was raised by third-party representations about the disused railway line, and that was answered. But there are a couple of others which I'd just like to, I don't think it's going to make any difference to our discussions, but I do think I'd like to touch on them. One is light pollution. Can you assure me that that's not a material planning consideration, or either that or it's been considered and not considered to be a major problem? There's a comment on that phase 1 doesn't look like it's being built out as it should, according to the approved plans. Presumably that is not something that we can take into consideration today. And a second comment that a second access onto Cambridge Road is needed. That presumably was a highways issue which has not been not been sort of raised by the Highways Department. Sorry, I just want to dot the I's on this, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Handley. So light pollution, and I know so we've got condition 26, and the other one was the transport issue.
So in terms of light pollution, it is a material planning consideration. We have consulted ecology and environmental health, and they have recommended condition 23 and 26 to require the applicant to provide us with further information with regards to lighting to ensure that light overspill won't harm amenity but also ecology, and will be sensitive to the village edge location that it is in. In terms of phase 1, can't comment on whether it is or isn't being built to the approved plans, but obviously that is a separate matter, and we'll obviously take that away and investigate that. In terms of an additional route through via Cambridge Road, officers have worked hard with the applicants to consider the transport implications of the site and access to the site. As I mentioned, no additional car parking provision is being proposed. There are technically three accesses to the site via West Way, Middle Way and East Way, which go via Grove Road to Babraham Road, and that was considered acceptable by County Highways to have an acceptable impact on the operation of the highway, and would not result in any highway safety concerns. So it was not considered necessary to have another access.
Thank you, Alyssa. I feel better having had those things covered over. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I can't see any further requests to speak. So, Rebecca, would you like to take us through the summary?
Just in summary, the recommendation is set out on page 38 of the report, section 11, recommendations to approve, subject to the conditions as set out below. There's a summary table of them and then the details with minor amendments as drafted to delegated to officers, along with the satisfactory completion of a section 106 agreement which includes the heads of terms set out in paragraph 10.99 of the report relating to transport and apprenticeships, again with minor amendments delegated to officers. Thank you, Chair.
So, members, let's vote on that. So, Aaron, do you want to... sorry, I haven't heard any objections to this, so can we just take this by affirmation? Would that be acceptable? Yes. Okay, so we're proposing to go with that recommendation. We'll take that by affirmation. Is that agreed? And are there any objections or abstentions? No? So that's unanimously agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to you for attending. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, members. And I'll ask Aaron to complete the live stream. I call... Oh, hang on. No. We've got items to come. We've got items to come. So we have the... No... Oh, yes. There's... Oh, yes, okay. So for compliance, item 7, compliance, to Rebecca.
You may have noted there was no report followed. This was unfortunately my error on drafting the agenda. As you're aware, the work that we've been undertaking with the compliance team is assigning priorities to all the open cases. That has now been completed. All the open cases have got a priority type assigned to them. The older cases, this caused a bit of an issue with the statistics, but as of last month, that was resolved and the statistics are all fine now. So as a result, I think you may recall in November, we agreed moving forward, we'd now be reporting compliance performance quarterly rather than monthly. So the next report should be coming to you in December. But obviously, as always, if you want a specific update on a specific case, then please contact either Chris Braybrook, Chris Barnes or Alistair, compliance manager, and the 2 principals who look after the 2 area teams, and they'll either have the answer for you or be able to get the case officer to contact you. But a plea from me, please, if you have got concerns about a potential breach, can you please log it via the online form to ensure it's logged in the system, because then you'll get a reference number, you'll get a case officer name and details, and it also stops them getting lost in my mailbox, unfortunately, or Chris's. So at least everything's registered then. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to number 8, appeals. And Rebecca, you'll be introducing the appeals on page 51 of our agenda.
Yeah, since the last agenda item last month, we've only received 2 appeal decisions in this report. One was an appeal allowed at 186 Cambridge Road. That followed on from a previously approved scheme. The main issues were character and appearance. There was numerous alterations to the proposal, but our concern related to an additional 1.5 metre projection to the front car park. The inspector didn't consider the wider building line to be consistent and didn't think it would be clearly discernible in the street scene. So overturned officer recommendation or officer decision, delegated decision of refusal, and approved that proposal. And then there was the self-build on Heath Road, Gamlingay, which was refused under delegated and the appeal dismissed. And then the ever-growing list of awaiting appeal decisions.
So the status of these is... Sorry.
I was going to say the only other update I have for you, hot off the press yesterday, is the informal hearing scheduled date for Grassy Corner. The hearing's being downgraded to written reps. So it will no longer be a hearing, it will be determined by written representations instead.
But on that date?
No, so written reps, you just do your statement and then the inspector sends their decision. So there won't be, it was scheduled for that date, but the hearing will no longer go ahead.
So can I just ask you to clarify for those of us for whom it is unfamiliar territory, what is the sequence, the steps with the appeals? So that we know the significance of these different sections of the report.
So Appendix 1 is decisions that we've received.
Yeah, but so if we receive an appeal, those are listed under
Appendix 2 is appeals received, yep.
And so that means we're registering them and then dealing with them through the inspectorate?
Yes.
Okay, so we then submit those appeals, or do the appeals go directly to the inspectorate?
Okay, so a brief summary on how a planning appeal works. So we submit, obviously we issue our decision. There are a couple of different kinds of ways of types of appeal. Some are fast track and some follow a normal process. Householder appeals are dealt with under a fast track process, but all appeals are to the planning inspectorate, they're not to the council. Yeah. So applicants who receive their decision notice they then appeal directly to the planning inspectorate. The inspectorate then notify us that they have received an appeal. So Appendix 2 is the list of appeals that have been received.
But by the inspectorate or by us?
We have been notified that those appeals have been received, if that makes sense. So they're the appeals that have started in the last month. Appendix 4 are those appeals that were received previously, where we have obviously, depending on the process, either had the hearing, done our written statements if it's a written reps, or in the case of a local inquiry, where the local inquiry has happened and we are awaiting a decision from the inspectorate, so there's no further action that we can take. 3A and 3B are those that are being dealt with by inquiry or informal hearings, and they've just got the dates on them, but 3B is no longer being dealt with, all of those. By informal hearing, it's a written representation. So they'll be moved into appeals waiting decision.
And 5, where it's appeals pending statement, that's where we're waiting for a statement from the planning inspectorate.
No, that's where we're waiting submission of our statement, and the statements are due according to this. One was in September, so that would be the date when, unfortunately, the report's produced well before the committee meeting. So there was a statement due. These are the ones that were due in the coming month, if that makes sense. So one was September, that's been and gone now, and then there are 2 statements due from us in October, and then those ones will also move into pending decision.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Has anybody got any questions for Rebecca on appeals? No, okay.
If I may, I thought Paynes was trying to catch up with the backlog.
So did I.
Ours seems to be getting longer.
So they now have targets and timeframes. So if we receive an appeal today, it has targets and timeframes, and they have performance monitoring measures that they have to return to the government on those ones, but any that were received and being dealt with before aren't caught by those targets. So they're the ones where we seem to be experiencing a bit more delay.
It's a bit of a tangent. I don't know whether you can answer this, but the results of the Darwin Green appeal decision, the development there is likely to go ahead. The area that's being developed is within my ward. All of the housing is going to be in my ward in Impington Parish, but parts of the green areas are going to be in Girton. I've already asked, I'm asking Civic Affairs, but I just wondered what the provision is for reorganisation of administration, and whether there's any comment upon that in the agreement with the in section 106 about how the area will be administered in local government terms after the development.
I actually will bring a Darwin Green appeal update to the next committee meeting. It's actually scheduled because JDCC was the determining committee. They're getting the update first, if that makes sense. So although the update is published on the JDCC agenda, but it wants to be discussed there before I could bring it here, if that makes sense. So next month, you should hear it next week, but I'll repeat it next month.
And am I right in thinking that requests for reassessment of the parished area they are requests to Civic affairs, are they not? Which come after the development has happened. I remember we had an adjustment in the parish boundary between Willingham and Over at one point, and also between Sawston and Babraham at some points, and I think they go to civic affairs, but I'm very happy to be corrected if that's not correct.
I'm very happy for someone else to answer that question.
Well, we can ask for that to be clarified back to members by email, I think. Okay, with that, members, thank you very much for your attention today, and I'll call the meeting closed at 12 o'clock. Could you take us offline, please, Aaron?